Stacking cash, learning the game. No more fear, no more shame. It's not just money, it's how you live. A future for the ones you give. Success is calling, don't ignore. Take control, unlock the door. Dreams ain't distant, they're right in sight. Sam will help you get it right. He's got the roadmap, got the plan. Helping you take a stand, financial peace, a future bright. Sam Knickerbocker shows the light. Call 385-323-2493. Change your life, now's the time.
So you guys get to meet my dad, John Knickerbocker, and not just meet him now, but what we're going to be doing as far as how the podcast moves forward is we're going to start alternating. Both of us will be interviewing people. And the reason, well, there's a few reasons for it, but one of the reasons is just completely different life experiences, ways of processing information. And I think that there's a lot of people, out of all the people who listen to my podcast, my dad often says, man, you could have asked this. You should have asked this. I want to know more about this from this person. And so, it's clear that different people would ask different questions. I ask certain questions that I want to know about because I'm nosy, right? So those are the questions I ask. Well, not everybody asks the same questions. And I think that in this process of building a legacy, one, you'll get to see a lot of the types of questions and who I've become is as a result of my dad, but there's still a lot about my dad that I didn't even know or I'm still learning, right? Different parts of who he is and why he is and how he got to where he is. And so in the conversation of legacy, and that's got a big part of this, like what types of things are you wanting to pass down multi-generational? I think it's an honor that we get to have like my dad, and one day I'll get my son on here, and we could have multiple generations of a conversation about legacy. What's important? How do we do it? What was the intention? How did that get worked into the process? You guys have heard me talk about elements of how I was raised and why I was raised away. And you've heard me tell stories about my mom and dad. So now you get to hear it straight from him. And if you want to be on the podcast and verify the information, be a guest, so you can ask John questions yourself, then come on down. You can go to thefuelyourlegacyshow.com. Or you can go to samknickerbocker.com, and there's a link there where it will take you to the Fuel Your Legacy Show website so that you can apply to be interviewed on the podcast. But it's more than just me. The podcast is always designed to be more than just me. It was designed to help people come up with better questions, identify what questions really created a human. Like, how did we get to where we are in life, and what questions drove us to there? And there's a lot of questions that my dad asked early on in life, and he found his answer to those, and they directed his whole life. And then there's some questions that he's never asked, and he's just starting to learn to ask as a result of watching myself or other of his children or other people in the world. So we all find these questions at different stages of our life, and the question is, what are we going to do about the questions that we find? And how are we going to implement those into our life? And what's that adoption rate into our life? And how do we speed up that adoption rate so that we can change quicker? There was a research study done by Harvard, and they asked basically what was the highest income producing years of life, decade by decade. And what they found was the most income producing decade of human life is actually from 60 to 70 years old. That's when the most income is generated in the average human's life. And then the second most income is generated age 70 to 80. The third most income is generated age 50 to 60. And so basically from 50 to 80 is you're most likely to attach to something, be consistent, and actually generate the most income during that process. And so it's fascinating, but John, he's right in the middle of the most productive years of human life, according to Harvard, income producing years of life. So that's kind of cool to think about. He's just getting started. If you look at Colonel Sanders or a lot of the people who developed companies, they didn't really hit their stride. I would say older companies, newer companies, they're starting a lot younger with the AI revolution and just the tech in general. But a lot of the past, it was happening a lot older. So anyways, so with that being said, John, Dad, welcome. Grateful that we're finally doing this. And I'm excited about the new venture as far as merging this, so you get to interview some of these guests as well. Go back into what was your early childhood. So you can talk about eventually what happened when your mom and dad got divorced, but go even prior to that. Like, what are some of your first memories and first decisions you made about life?
Oh, wow. So let's see. Well, one of my earliest memories was probably kindergarten. I mean, that I can remember. There's several there. And they all had to do with me thinking that I knew better than somebody else. Imagine that. One day my dad took me out to the field to retrieve irrigation pipes, and he put me on the tractor and he said, stay in the row and stop before you get to the end of the row. And then I'll get up here and turn it around so we can go back and do it again. So I'm driving the tractor down the row and I get near the end and I think, you know what, if I turned right now, I could get this turned around so that I could do half the work. I can't back up, but I could do half the work for him. Well, as soon as that front tire jumped into the next row, he was pulling me out of that seat and stopped the tractor, and he was very upset with me. And I couldn't figure out, hey, I'm just trying to... No, I told you to do this, you didn't do it. You know, another time, I just couldn't see the reason for all of us to take a nap in kindergarten. I mean, this is a place to learn. Why do we have to take a nap? And then another time, the bus let me off near our house, and it was raining, and there was nobody home. And I was I felt rejected. I mean, I felt abandoned is the right word, I guess. And it was, on their side, it was a series of, I can't remember exactly. I think there was a flat tire involved or something like that, but it wasn't intended that no one would be home for me. But that's what happened. So those were kind of, well, I guess I got to figure this out on my own, this life thing. I was the oldest of my siblings. One day, Grandma came over to visit, and she said, okay, well, I got to go home now. And the kids ran out, my two younger siblings, ran out to hold the front storm door, closed. And I said, no, Grandma needs to go home. And so I backed up and ran right into I put one hand on the storm door, but one hand went into the window. And the kids were pushing from the other side, and I could feel that tension. And I'm going, no, don't stop. But they did, because they thought I was pretty mad. And so they let go, and my hand went right through. So I have some scars today from that experience. Oh, I guess it was this one. Anyway, but again, it was me thinking that I knew better. Then it turned out that after the window shattered, Grandma comes around from the back door. What's going on? So, there was all these instances where I think I know what's better, and other people are saying, no, not necessarily. But there was another time where we got really special Christmas presents, and then we were going to be moving right afterwards, and I figured I want mine in the car with me, not in the moving trailer. And I threw a fit, and my mom and dad are like, why? And I said, because, I don't know, something's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. 50 miles down the road, because they loaded the trailer so heavily, rubbing tire started a fire. A lot of the stuff was just left for someone to take to the dump. So those are my earliest memories that I can think of and that was a situation where I did know. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something was going to happen, and it did. That might also be my earliest memory of what of the principles involved in The Secret that you've talked about before, where listen to those things. Even if you don't know, you should listen and you should follow up on it, because it'll show up and you'll go, that's why.
I think that's a two-edged sword, so we'll get into that.
Now I'm thinking about good things, but stuff can happen.
Yeah. I think that's a double-edged sword. I want to go back to your experience on the tractor, though, because you had 11 kids. You're the oldest of 5?
Well, depends on how you talk about it, but 4 when I was younger, and then a 5th one came, and then my mom got remarried, and we had 2 more. 3 more technically, because they had one that was adopted, but she was never in my experience of life.
Right. Yeah, so I would say... for sure, oldest of 4 then.
Yeah.
So when you think about, this may not be the right way of saying it, but like, should you have listened to your dad, or should your dad have just let you try and turn the tractor yourself?
Well, I think there's kind of a middle ground. Being a first child is really difficult for parents because they don't know what's going on. They don't know how to teach and train and mentor. They're just winging it. We did with ours. I learned so much from my kids right from the first one. There were questions that I had, concerns as I was growing up. When I have kids, how am I going to handle this? There was things that I learned how to handle it, and I developed plans, but then there were things that I learned from my kids. In that particular situation, yes, he should have got up and stopped me, but he should have said, "What were you thinking?" And I could tell him, and he'd go, "Okay, but I told you to do this, right? Okay, so another time we can come out here and we can play around so that you can learn how to turn. But I really need you to do it just this way. And then make me do it again and do it right." But no, fun time was over.
What was his response then? Because obviously he was upset, which I find myself upset about those situations when I ask my kids to do something.
I was on the ground. I was standing. He didn't throw me off the tractor, but he set me down and he said, "You can't do this anymore because you can't do what I say," And that's a tough lesson too. And that has to be taught. But he didn't recognize that I wanted to learn and I wanted to contribute more than just what he wanted me to do.
So how old were you though? Like, I don't know what kindergarten is. I have my own kindergarten stories, but 5 years old.
Somewhere around 5 years old, yeah.
So like 5 years old, like what can you really do physically? How effective can you be at turning a tractor at 5 years old?
Well, some of us are bigger than others. And it wasn't like I started out trying to turn it. I had driven the whole length of the field in the row. So I'd become comfortable with how the tractor moved. And so I thought, okay, this is the next step. We're watching Aurora, one of my granddaughters, just learning how to walk, and she's learning how to get off of the couch without falling on her nose. And it's been kind of fun watching her figure out how to slide off and kind of hold on. And she's got this it's a graceful dismount right now, just like gymnasts do, and she's doing really good. She's 1 year old. What can 5-year-olds do? My goodness. 5-year-olds.
I'm sure 5-year-olds can do it. For me, this is where my mind goes as a parent, right? And I think we all had different experiences growing up. But maybe I'm more concerned about my possessions, for lack of a better word, especially if my possessions are something that helps me provide income. So the stress of a broken possession isn't necessarily the stress of a broken possession, but it's that the bigger implications of that broken possession is less provisions later.
Yeah.
So there's a level of like, okay, I'm willing to let you take risks. I'm willing to let you learn for yourself with certain things. I'm also not willing to let you play around and screw up things that are like you don't understand as a 5-year-old.
Like if I turned too tightly, then I would mess up and maybe bend the irrigation pipes on the trailer. That was one of his big concerns was you can't turn because these are valuable pipes and we have, they can't be bent and damaged and all that.
Right. Because if it gets damaged, and again, as a 5-year-old, you try and explain, I've tried to explain stuff like that to my kids, to Declan and Quincy, and they just don't, they're an endless bucket of whys past like as detailed as an explanation as you can give somebody because they don't even understand the words of the explanation. Then they're still like, well, why? And it's like, at some point, it really is. When you're older, you understand. But as of right now, it's because I said so. Like there is no. I've adequately explained that anything that a normal human would understand, you don't understand, which means this is why. Because you don't understand, this is why. If and we can keep trying to explain, but right now, in this moment, you have to listen. And so it's kind of an interesting thing because what it comes down to is ultimately, you decided something about your life and what you were and were not allowed to do in life because of that experience.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that, when I asked this question, you had 5 years worth of life at that point, which means you had 5 years worth of experiences, moments, seconds in your life. Yet you remember when I asked that question the one time you were offended because you thought you knew better and somebody told you, no, you don't know better. I didn't prompt any of these questions or any of these experiences. You didn't know what I was going to ask you. But yet that was a memory, one that I've never heard before. I'm 32 years old. I've never heard you tell that story before. But it's still so fresh in your mind as far as a decision about who you are and what you're allowed to do in this world. So I'm curious, what was the decision? What did you learn from that experience that is now controlling your existence in an avoidance pattern of having that experience again?
It seems to be obvious, but I haven't really thought about it much to discover the answer to that. Let's see. Part of it was just that, sometimes, obviously he felt it was danger. I didn't see the danger that much, but I needed to recognize what other people saw as important or dangerous. I need to recognize how other people would react to that kind of thing. And so when I'm doing something that I think is okay and I plan on stopping, judging my abilities and stopping before it gets too dangerous, other people don't see it that way. And if I want to be able to continue, then I have to do what they say.
Explain that more, because that's a lot of nothing, right? It's not clear what you're saying. So yeah. What do you mean? Like, give me an example of something that you would be doing in current life that you'd like to keep doing and go to discover your limits, but because other people don't recognize your limits, they say no, or they don't want to watch you.
They don't recognize. They don't recognize my.
That you're aware that you're going to
my awareness of my limits. Yeah.
Well, you openly are not aware of your limits, and that's why you're doing it, because you want to identify your limits. And so there's a challenge there, because somebody else doesn't know. Like, does he know when to stop? Does he not know when to stop? How long do we let him go to define his limit?
I think that looking through my life, I think that there's a lot of people that imposed their limits on my search for experience or knowledge or understanding.
What about their limits do you feel like? Why do you think there became a situation where their limits were imposed on you?
Because my actions impacted theirs. Well, like you said, my actions impact whether the possessions that I have for making money or for providing or whatever are going to be impacted. Or basically they feel a responsibility for me, or they feel that's something that I'm playing with or working with. If things go wrong, it could impact them negatively. So they want to prevent that. I haven't had a lot of experiences where there was a real conversation about that.
So again, I don't know where I probably got this from mom more than anybody. I don't know. But I believe in personal accountability more than I believe in personal responsibility or any other type of thing. I think you should be the one who takes ownership for your life and no excuses. So there's not a lot of conversations, but who didn't start the conversations about it, right? Because you've had experiences with mom, you've had experiences with your employers, you've had experiences in other areas of your life where you thought best, you did what you thought was doing, but maybe you didn't pre-communicate
exactly
your awareness.
That's part of it. But when I was teenager, it was my habit to start a conversation in the middle of the one I was having in my head. And so people are like, what? Wait. And those that actually cared about me, that was one of my judges for how, if people care about me, if they're really my friends, they go, wait, back up. What are you thinking about? What are you talking about? And as soon as they could get into where I was, then they go, okay, now we can go forward. But if they were like, you're weird, and turn away, then I knew that, they're not somebody that, but that was a kind of a coping thing, but it didn't really, I think that was one of those things that I missed growing up, of having somebody say, look, you can't say it like that. You have to talk to people this way. And if you want to do something, you need to come ahead of it and propose and say, this is what I know, this is what I'm trying to find out, etc. And so it's always, a lot of it was just living life on my own, making up my own rules as I go, and just trying to do things on my own. And it was difficult. It's still difficult for me because I know about teamwork. I know about leading. I know about sharing responsibilities and stuff, but when it comes down to it, I don't think that I have resources to engage other people to join with me to accomplish something.
What do you mean by that? You don't think you have resources to engage people? Like what type of resources?
Well, I don't have the friendships. I don't have the understanding of what other people might, people say they're, socially I'm acknowledging now to me that I have a lot of people who would be happy to help me out, to work with me, but I don't see that yet in my mind. I don't recognize that this person knows this thing. If I ask, I'm sure they'd be willing to help me learn this little bit more or do this for me so that I can move on to do the next thing. Like I said, I didn't have that when I was growing up. I was just kind of, like I said, just kind of living on my own and trying to figure it out on my own. There were things that, because of where we lived, the circumstances of our family, where my mom got divorced when I was 8, and I didn't, she didn't get remarried till I was 18, so I had like 10 years, 8 to 18, without a dad. One day I was walking down the sidewalk and moaning to God about, why don't I have a dad? I really need somebody that I can talk to and that can be there watching me every day and say, hey, that was stupid. How about try this instead? And as I'm having this conversation, the house that I'm walking past, the screen door slams open and out flies this kid and falls down the steps, and there's his dad in the background cussing at him. And I'm going, point taken. It could be worse. But still, where am I going to learn these things? I need the help. I need the assistance. There were men in my life at church and scouts who tried, teachers, but they didn't get together and take notes and say, okay, where is he here or anything. That wasn't their job. They're just there to help me out point to point. But, and friends, I'd start, meet new people start in the middle of a conversation or very rudely or brusquely. And, fortunately a couple of times my friend was there and he says, John, don't say it that way. Do this. Hi, how are you? My name's Rick. How, what's your name? Instead of, why are you here? And so I had some of that, but just not a coherent, I didn't have somebody that was there that could see the whole journey and guide me in the journey. So it's been hard, and I've learned a lot of those things, but it's not until just in the last 5 to 10 years that I've recognized the things that I've learned.
Right. With your dad, like, when did you recognize that your relationship, and maybe your relationship with your dad never really deteriorated, but because your mom and dad got divorced, then he was no longer around. But maybe it did deteriorate. When did it start? When did you start to recognize or believe that maybe your dad wasn't, or was more rejecting, similar to the tractor experience, than nurturing or wanting to be involved in your life?
Say that again?
I'm not sure how to say this, but like, I personally, your son, who's the 7th child, right? I don't have any recollection of ever meeting your father. Now, my mom says that, one time when I was 3 years old, we met each other. Wonderful. Yeah. I don't remember anything about that. So like, if you ask me, do I know who my grandpa is? The answer is a flat no. Like, I have no idea, other than like random stories, but it's almost like Voldemort, where it's like the guy who shall not be talked about or named. That's kind of how, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's not the way it should have been, but like, that's kind of how it, and I don't know if it was like shouldn't be talked about, but it definitely wasn't talked about. And anytime it was talked about, I don't know that I have heard, like, if I had to put a percentage on it, and this is just spitballing, right? But if I had to put a percentage on it, it's probably like 5, maybe 10% positive about this human, and the rest of it was not positive. And so all I have heard about him is through a broken, bitter lens, whatever I've heard from grandma, whatever I've heard from other people. Like, I haven't heard anything really positive about this person. I don't even know who he is, really. Like, I just know nothing about this person, which I know he's dead now, so I know that. He's buried somewhere. But like, I just don't know about him. I don't know who he is. I don't know what was going on in his life. What was the thing that created him, right? But at some point, I assumed that if you had a good relationship with him up to 8 years old, my belief is, because I have a lot of memories prior to 8, that there would have been some level of more discussion about him in my life. And as a result of there not being discussion, then it's my assumption that there was a deterioration of your relationship. There was at some point you decided, that guy ain't worth knowing, he ain't worth talking about, he ain't worth doing anything with. So that happened at some point. Some point you decided, we're not really going to talk about him to our family. I don't know why. We did have a great grandpa, right? I love your stepdad. I love Grandpa Nick. Like, I love everybody. Like, I love it. But I still don't know. And I would say the same thing about Mommy's dad. I don't know. I just don't know. I'm like, I kind of know his name, but like, there's not like a lot of information bank for me about him. And so what I'm curious is, when was your relationship already deteriorated? Had you already written him off by the time of this tractor experience at 5 years old? Or was that like the beginning of like, you know what, maybe he doesn't care about me. Maybe he just cares about his stuff and not me. This is what I'm trying to identify. What was the decisions that you made about yourself and about life in these early core experiences?
I almost think it's like a general, I've seen it in some of you kids where our daughters say, I do not want to be like mom. And then a few years later, they call and say, Mom, I'm just like you. And, it's the fun stuff. It's the, they can't stop laughing, or they find everything funny, or they work so hard, or, and even the boys have things where they're so like her, which was intentional. When I was looking around, I knew I wanted children, and I knew that there were things that I didn't know. And so I was looking for a woman that had what I didn't, so that my kids would have a better education and upbringing. I didn't know what it would cost me, as far as in the world of compromise and negotiation and things you just got to give up because she's not going for it, or, whatever. But that's what I was looking for. One of the things. But anyway. And in some conversations with you, I've got that you have a lot of the same things with you that are part of me. Basically introverted, hardworking, willing to go after something and learn. And you have stated several times that you want to grow and change all the time. Not like what you were was a bad thing. It's just that you're going to be growing and you want to recognize that. Not talking about my dad was admittedly some of that. Why did he leave us? Why did he let us go? And believing what my mom said. And it wasn't that she said anything terrible. There were just some things that, like she would say, you remind me so much of your dad. I hope you don't grow up to be like him. And I'm going, why? I think that I'm pretty good. I was more of a bookworm than an outdoor go and get after it and build something, like build a treehouse or something like that. She was worried that I wouldn't. The reason that I understood that she left was that he could never stick with one thing long enough to actually make money, to provide for us. Not like make money like be rich, but make money to provide for us. That time when you were 3 years old, that was, let's see, 8.
I'd have been 96.
Yeah,
somewhere around there. I don't know exactly what year. I might not have been 3.
That was nearly 30 years since the last time I'd seen him. Not quite 30, but like 27 years. My experience of him was basically, if I think hard, I can remember the 2 games of chess that we played. The first one, he was showing me how the pieces work and he won. He set me up so he could do a checkmate on me fairly quickly. But the second game, he was trying to win and I won. He got mad. He left the house. He didn't throw the chessboard and all the pieces go scattering or anything, but he just got mad and he would never play me again. And there were a couple things like that where when I showed him that I had learned, and to the point where I beat him, then he didn't like that. And for me, I've always been like, no, I want you kids to be better than me. Please, I'm not doing my job right if you are not better than me. Maybe that's one of those things that I learned from him, because I didn't like it. that he
But
would.
I think that
You know,
what's fascinating is
that
listening to these
colors-
stories.
That colors what you guys didn't hear but did hear, what you experienced.
Well, I think listening to a lot of these stories, it's like it's fascinating that, and I think in life there's always this pendulum. I think that as I grew up, I perceived that I would live my life a certain way, or I had this idea of how I would parent. And the more that I get into parenting, the more I think I really liked the way I was raised. I'd like, let's see if I can replicate that, except for I'm not that determined, and frankly. You and Mom, you guys were willing to sacrifice a lot to generate 11 children that are who we are. And I'm grateful for that. And I look back and think, I don't know if I'm that committed. Like I'm committed to a point, but I don't know if I'm that committed. Like homeschooling. I'm committed not to send my children to a public school. Committed. I feel confident that kids are going to grow up, and if they can do basic reading, writing, and then they're going to be successful. So like my current commitment is to get them to go to school long enough to learn basic reading, writing, their multiplication table, division, like basic information. And then I'm not committed to sending them to school or even having them like follow any one specific curriculum. Yet Mom would we would go get all the books from the library. She had all these programs, and it was pretty organized homeschooling, in my opinion. Like at least by the time I was going through it, it was pretty organized. It was a lot of effort. I don't know how she did it with all the children. It doesn't make sense to me. Like I just think, wow, that's insane. I understand why you were insane. And I have no intention of driving Charlie or myself insane. And so my solution is I'm not going to the public school. I'm not going to just like pass it off to the public school, but I'm also not going to probably put in that much effort in those things that Mom put effort into. So that leaves me kind of like in a weird, I don't know yet. I mean, the reality is I just don't know, but I feel confident that I would much rather just as soon as my children can do reading, writing, and basic math, say, hey, go study whatever topic you're interested in and let's go build a business. And let's go build a business. Like that's the thing I know. It's the thing I enjoy. Let's go build a business. And if you want to do something other than build a business, go do that. But I want to build, like I'm willing to help teach you how to build a business. And I think that people will be better served if they learn how to sales skills, communication skills, and business skills than if they learn geometry or basic geography or whatever. But I think that maybe we miss out on a lot of that. Like I think one of the things that I benefited a lot from, whether this was intentional because Mom was searching for what she believed about God, or whether it just happened to be the Tapestry of Grace study material. I don't know which one it was, or if she found Tapestry of Grace or whatever. I think it was Tapestry of Grace, that study material, and she liked it because it helped us. But the benefit of studying lots of different religions, like not just passively learning about them, but studying lots of different religions, going to all the different churches, interviewing their pastors, writing papers about like all of that helped me become a lot more aware of how ununique or unique my belief system is in different areas and target those things. So those are things like, was that a result of Mom trying to figure out what she believed, or is that, and she brought the family along with her? Or was that like, hey, I just want my kids to be exposed to a lot of different stuff. I don't know what the intention was behind it. I'm grateful it happened.
One of the intentions is just a lot of people that I know find that it's very valuable to go live in another country for a while, preferably 3 or 4 countries. Not for necessarily a long time, but 3 months, 6 months, not just tourists for a week or 2.
Right, long enough to see a customs that's different.
You get to see how people handled things differently. And if you're smart, you don't go in with, hey, we know the best way to do things. Why don't you do it our way? You go in to watch and learn. And what you find out is that people are people. They have big hearts. They're willing to help. They love to greet you, to welcome you into their home, so to speak, to their country, but also into their home, and share with you their life if you're not coming in with a I'm better than you attitude. And when you get home, you have a perspective that gives you grace and empathy for your own people, but also for a whole bunch of other people. And learning about other churches does that in the realm of religion and faith. It's to start for that. And it also, in your case, it's given you huge opportunities to relate to people that you're talking to. You have a very wide diversity of people that you get to talk to and meet with, and you're able to feel at home with you, so to speak, because you can be familiar with them, and you're not just stuck over here the little way that you grew up. Again,
Maybe I am, though.
maybe you are, since that is how you grew up. Anyway, I want to go back to my dad for a couple minutes. That time that you don't remember, for about 5 years prior to that, I had been thinking, you know what? I need to reconcile with my dad. I need to tell him that I'm sorry that I shut him out. I know why I did it, but I need to tell him what I did and why I did it. I need to repent. And I can't just pray to God and say, I'm sorry I did this. I had to reconcile with him. And I knew that my brother, who's just a year younger than me, he had a better breadth of knowledge and resources and people as he grew up than I did. I knew that he had been keeping track of him. Not like he knew where he was every day or anything like that, but he had been kind of just keeping tabs every once in a while. And I don't know I think initially it was because he had that same feeling that he needed to get to know him a little bit better. So at some point I says, do you know where he is? Do you know how to contact him? He says, I do. Okay, because I need to reconcile and I need to get in touch. And he says, well, I'll see what I can set up. So we're at they call it Scoutorama. It's basically a big fair for all the scouts in the area to everybody come and show stuff that you know, stuff that you can do, and stuff like that. They even held it at the fairgrounds there in Salt Lake. And I'm there assisting our troops. You know, I was there as a chaperone, make sure the kids don't get lost or hurt too bad, and things like that. And I'm walking back. It's time to meet up. So I'm walking back to our place, and I see this person there with Mommy, and I think you were there, actually. I don't remember. Anyway, a couple of kids, and this person's towards that same place, but from the other side. So we're kind of walking towards each other, but not intentionally. And I thought, I wonder why Dan's here, my brother. And then I got closer. I thought, that's not my brother. That's my dad. And we got to talk, and what was supposed to be a 4-hour get-together and reconciliation opportunity ended up being a week and a half to 2 weeks of him staying at our house. We got to go out and work in the garden together. We'd have conversations. And the conversations that we're having, my wife's going, oh my God, there's two of them. Because he and I got to have conversations, those intimate conversations where you know what the other person's going to say, and you can say it, or you can notate it by saying something, and so then they go, oh, you got it, and I can say the next thing. Yes, and I can say the next thing. And, we're talking and not completing our sentences because we are we're in the same groove. We're in the same row. I love science. I love energy. I love learning about how we can improve, and as people, we can improve and do better and be better for families and help bring civilization as a whole up and move on to the next thing. That I'm not into fighting and tearing people down. He was so much into that sometime after that event of a couple weeks.
So much into the fighting, tearing people down, or so much
into
everything that you're into.
He was so much into everything that I was into, okay, but also into the idea of bringing a better energy to the world. He loved the world and every individual that he knew in it. And I didn't really get to have that expressed to me until that visit. It was so good for me, and it was so good for him to have that. But the point is that several years after that point in time, he was so intent that he actually went and changed his name to recognize that he wanted to be part of that energy that quantum physicists are just still talking about.
So what was his name What did he change his name to?
His name was Darwin Mickle,
Right, but what did he change it
and he
to?
changed it to Darwin Teos.
Okay.
There's a town that's spelled Taos. He changed his to Teos, which is an acronym for the energy of space. Now, 150 years ago, and a bit more recently, it took a while for mainstream scientists to kind of poo-poo it, but now they're recognizing it again. But they used to call it the ether. The ether is that stuff in space that is there, and it's energy, but we don't have any way of controlling it. We have no way of seeing it. We have no way of grabbing a hold of it. So let's work with electricity first and see what we can do with that. And there have been, our world has been built on electricity for the last 100 or so years. And now we're starting to understand that, electricity is okay, but there's actually something that we could do a lot more if we just work with and interact with the energy that's there. But that's beyond. That's beyond our focus here. But I just want you to know that some other things that earlier in his life, I talked to his sisters, one of his sisters, and she told me of experiences when he was younger, when he was a teenager, he just had a feeling that he needed to go right now. He turned and they were out in the middle of the field, probably doing irrigation. I don't know what it was, but he just turned to his dad. He got down off the tractor. He turned to his dad, and his dad's, "What's going on?" He says, "I don't know, but I got to go see her." Well, that was in Idaho Falls. She was in Boise. So he had to make that drive before there was an interstate freeway. He gets there to Boise just about the time that her life was falling apart. I don't know if there was a crisis event, some big argument between her husband and her or something. I can't remember the details on that, but it was.
Who's the her? Zeta. Okay.
Okay. Which I think
her is the sister.
The sister.
I've met Zeta.
Yeah.
The one in New Plymouth.
Yeah. Not New Plymouth. She's in Boise.
Oh, she's in Boise.
Okay. The one in New Plymouth was Dad Knickerbocker's.
Knickerbockers. Right. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, she said her life had just literally fallen apart. And he was there to say, "Hey, I'm here." He was her younger brother. He was the only son. He had 3 older sisters. He was the youngest of the 4. But his dad said, "You better go." Not a question. And he went. And he was able to prevent her from having a total breakdown. She could have a breakdown, but he was there. So it's not going to be debilitating. When we were just young, just newly married, we moved to Alaska. We met a couple there, and it was several months before the guy there found out that I had been adopted when I was 21 and a half. "Oh, really? What was your name before?" And I told him, and he's going, "Do you by chance know a Darwin Mickle?" I go, "How do you know my dad?" And I found out that as a teenager, he was part of the Civilian Air Corps that was in the chapter that was in Idaho Falls. He wasn't a pilot, but he was a mechanic. Those planes, those that were pilots, knew that if he had touched their plane, they didn't have a thing to worry about. Those are all things that I learned that was before. So when I did meet with Dad, I got to tell him about that experience. But to find out those things about him, those would have changed my life, knowing those things. Even though I felt like I was alone, and even though I didn't get the training and the coaching, the individual mentoring that I would have liked to have gotten, and have just kind of had to pick things up on my own and try things and fall flat on my face. And guess what? That's what everybody does anyway. But it's still nice to have somebody there to pick you up and say, dust you off and say, "Okay, get back out there, do it."
Right.
You guys are doing that for your kids. Each of you's a little different, but you're doing it.
Yeah,
I'm so proud of you because of that. Yeah, there's things that I did with intent. Pulling back to fueling your legacy, you've heard this story, but others haven't. The first time that I heard about how money can grow and how finances work and the law of compound interest demonstrated to me was in a presentation where the presenter says, I've heard from a lot of successful people, but the way to, the way to become successful in this life is to outproduce the other guys. And I was looking at my skill set. I didn't have marketing as a skill set. I wanted you guys to each have some exposure, and you did more than others, I think, on that. I can outproduce. That was at the time when we only had 3 kids. And so what am I going to do with these 11 mini-me's? Well, I want them to be mini-me's, and I want them to grow up to be big me's. I want them to grow up. I didn't know it at the time, but kind of like my dad, that loves the world and wants to increase the amount of love in the world. And I didn't want you to do it all the way that I did it. In fact, I didn't want you to do it the way that I did it. I wanted you to find your own ways and to increase and infuse in conversation and heart and empathy in the level of product that you provide in the world. Several of our kids are in various forms of construction. And you wouldn't think, if you're just talking about construction, you wouldn't think of that as being a place where you can add love and understanding and growth. I watched Gabriel for a time when he had his heating and air conditioning plumbing business. I watched our morning meetings. He cared. He showed and he expressed and he mentored care and love for those guys from 18 to 54. Well, I guess to me too, and I was older than that, but everybody. And it was not just, hey, love you guys. No, there was a level of sincerity and a level of commitment that they were his kids. They were his team that he got to mentor during that time. When things went wrong, tore him up inside. And when things went right, he was so animated, just like Mommy is. Not me. I'm not that animated. I got to do better with that. My legacy, my first legacy, is to infuse into the world. I want to take over the world with love. I see that you do that. This podcast does that. I've listened to, I think, every episode.
It's a lot of episodes.
I learned so much from you during those early episodes. It helped me to grow those episodes, and all the way through the more recent episodes. They're fascinating. It's wonderful to see and hear how people are doing things and overcoming their challenges. Again, there's such a breadth. There's an opportunity. I believe anybody can find at least one episode, but probably 10 or more, that they can relate with and go, yeah, I want to be like that. You guys are doing it. I know that Mommy and I have been successful. Not perfect, not by any stretch, but end of the day, you're all doing it, and you're all doing a great job. Different challenges for each one of you. I remember when Jarna was a teenager, she was complaining to me about how something was going and it was just terrible. And I says, honey, one day you'll realize, and I hope I'm there, but one day you'll realize that you got the very best and the very worst of me, and the very best and the very worst of Mommy in a perfect combination for you to grow and for you to meet your challenges. And I hope I'm alive long enough for you to say, thank you. I get it now. I have had some of those kinds of messages from you guys, either personally or text message or whatever, but you're all doing it. I've been listening to a guy by the name of Rich Thawley recently, and he's been talking about, he's been very successful. He started he started his family just a couple years before I did. And we kind of touched paths. I touched his path early on. And then more recently, I've got back into seeing how he's doing life. And he just set up trusts for his families for 360 years. That he's looking forward. And he points out what I've kind of always known, but I didn't know how to do the other part of it. I mean, you got to have money to care for if your trust has to be funded. It has to be fueled. But if there's no heart guiding, and if there's no children with a heart of love, then it's just money and it'll be gone. He's hoping and planning and envisioning and dreaming for his family to extend and take over the world with love. And the money's just, fill the tank every once in a while. That's vision way beyond me. I just send you guys out there.
But Dad, it's not too late. That's why I started this podcast. You're in your best years of life. Like, now is the time. Now is the time to take the investment of relationships and time and people and experiences, and you get to implement that. And that's what's so fun about life and exciting about life, is that we get that opportunity to not be stuck, but every day. This is something that I think doesn't get taught.
Finding something new about myself that I'm going, you know what? Yeah, I did that. I believe that I caused myself to wear glasses for the last 50 years. Not like I went and, did anything dangerous or injured my eyes or anything, but I remember reading a book and thinking, I wonder what it would feel like. I wonder what it would be like to not be able to see clearly or to be blind. My vision got worse from that moment.
Never thought that.
And now, don't think that. Now, just about a week ago, I thought for 10, 15 years, I've been thinking, I know I don't have to do that, but I don't know how to get out of that loop. I know that my vision is improving. These are my computer glasses. When I got them so that I could see the monitor just 6 inches beyond my arm's length, okay? That they're focused or geared for that. I have another set for driving so that I can read the signs on the freeway 50 feet away or 100 feet away or how fast I'm driving. Well, for the last year and a half, for the last 4 years, I've worn these almost exclusively. And I was just checking. I can read those signs with these glasses. My eyes are better than they were 5 years ago, but they're still not there. And it was just about a week ago, I thought, you know what? I need to tell my subconscious, thank you. Now I have 50 years of experience of that. I don't need that anymore. I got plenty of experience. Now I want to see clearly again. I want a perfect vision. And I'm excited for where that's going to lead. And anytime I get a chance, I can't wear these to look at a computer anymore because they're out of focus. That's why I don't have them on right now.
So we were at a conference earlier this week, I guess. And the guest keynote speaker, his name's, oh man, why did I forget his name? Anyways, I'll have to get back to the name. But he's blind. He went blind when he was in college. He has some degenerative eye disease or whatever. He said that losing his sight was the thing that gave him vision.
Yes.
So.
And that has, I agree with that. And I have gained some things that if I just had perfectly normal vision my whole life.
Perfectly normal sight. I'm going to invite you to change your words because the reason I ask is I have great sight. And I think I have it, if I was to compare, right, to other people that have much bigger visions than I do, they have better vision than I do. I also believe I have a lot better vision than some people, right? Like I understand I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know where I'm in the middle, but I don't think I'm the worst person I know. I don't think I'm the best person I know. But I do know that I think having sight impairs my vision.
And that's a common observation.
So it'll be interesting to see how your vision actually improves when your sight improves.
I understand what you're saying, and I've been having, that's been part of my discussion with myself. That inner vision, I have lived that same period of time without it, mostly, like 99% of the time. My dreams, every once in a while, I'll get to see my dreams. And every once in a while from there, they're full color, just like a movie. They're wonderful. It's great. I remember when I was younger, that used to happen all the time. But most of the time during this last 50 years, it's been shut off, mostly. And so yes, my sight is improving and it will be perfect, 2020, etc., or better. But my vision is coming back too,
Well,
because
it's
I'm requesting that it be restored. That it
yeah. Well, maybe your vision already is coming
with
back.
I'm done with the experiment, the 50-year experiment. I have enough information. I have enough data. I get it. And now I need that. I need it. I need all of it. And so that's why I said vision, not just sight.
Yeah. Well, your vision is probably changed before your sight, because you had to have the vision of saying, you know what, the awareness, and then the vision of saying, I don't need these glasses. So your vision is already acclimating and coming in first, and then your sight is following, because things are created
The glasses,
spiritual before they're created physical.
yeah, the glasses are a tool. Some people call it a crutch, whatever. It's an aid to help improve while you're not totally well. I'm using them not using them as let's see. I'm using them as a weight, as a weightlifter would use, or like, one of these stretch bands. Okay. I'm using them to get better. And I'm at the point where they're kind of worn out and I need to get a new pair of glasses, or just not worry about it because I'm not going to need them that much anymore.
Yeah. Just
You know,
improve your sight and your
because
vision.
my vision can be totally restored in a matter of a week, I think. How long does it take to regenerate eye cells?
Well, I was gonna, I don't know about the eye cells, but I was gonna bring this up is like what's so fascinating, or one thing that I love about my life and the ability to change is, in general, most cells in your body are not more than 3 months old at most. Most of them are 30 days or less, but there's some in your femurs that go a little bit longer. But for the most part, your body is completely brand new every 30 days. Like every cell in your body is pretty much brand new. 95% of your cells are brand new every 30 days. And so when you start to think about that, anything that is not going well in your life, one, that is longer than 30 days it's because you recreated that.
Because
you recreated those things.
You chose to
and then
keep
second, you chose to keep it. Or at the very least, you didn't choose not to. I mean, that
exactly.
I'm not saying everybody. I believe that most people are only 5% conscious, 95% subconscious. So I don't know that I believe that people are consciously choosing to do stuff, but I also don't think that they're consciously choosing not to. That's number one. Number two is anybody that has in the past. So although we experience these experiences that you remember from kindergarten and now you're 60 plus years old, any of these things that we believe happened to us or that we experienced, the physical truth is, no, you were not in existence for that. You didn't exist. You didn't exist 30 days ago. You exist now, and you won't exist in 30 days. There will be a completely new person that exists in 30 days. So if you are feeling shame, guilt, resentment, anger, love, all those things, that can all change in 30 days. And if 6 months ago, that person that did something, I have things that I've done in my life that I think back and I think, I never did that. I remember being there when it happened. The you part of me, the infinite part of me remembers that experience, but Samuel Knickerbocker never did that. So the last, generations ago, Samuel Knickerbocker, he did some dumb things, but this person never did that. So rather than when somebody says, hey, have you ever done this? Nope, never have. This 30-day window of me has never done that. I don't identify with those experiences. I don't identify as somebody who lives in fear. I don't identify as somebody who has panic attacks. I don't identify as somebody who goes to the gym, right? I can say that. I don't identify as somebody who goes to the gym. Why? Because I haven't been to the gym in 30 days, right? So, it does, all of those things, what do you identify as? And if you continue to identify as something, then it'll be that way. If I started today to identify as somebody who goes to the gym, I'd be going to the gym every day. And it's a change of who are you? But you have to be aware that you are only there for 30 days. That's it. That's the longest you'll ever be here. And so you can change as fast as you want, Dad. You can change as slow as you want. You can keep soaking up your experiences, or you can say, hey, I'm done with that experience. Let's go to a different one. Let's go experience more.
I have several other things going on in my life and that have goals and dates.
Good.
One of them, anybody in the world that, again, from the experience side of it, they go, that would be a miracle. That can't happen. Not going to happen. And I know that it can. And I'm betting on it. I'm so excited, and I want it to be a surprise. I just want to show up and say, oh yeah, I'm going to run a race, and I'm going to win it. And it's the first time that I will have ever participated in that level of a race. And all my kids know, I don't run. But
we choose to.
Yes, and I have some things in the way right now, like your little brother's getting married on Saturday, okay? And I know that I have to change what I don't do and change what I do to prepare for that race. I've got a prior coworker who has competed in similar races in the past. I'm going to give him a call and say, hey, I need some pointers. What's the most useful training that I can do? I have an idea of what I need to do, but that's just me. And if you know something better, then that's great. We work together at the elementary school as custodians. And any of you that have never been a custodian or janitor before, it ain't easy. And we had to clean up the lunchroom and put the tables away and stuff like that and lift, 55-gallon trash can of trash out of the trash can and throw it in the dumpster. Paper's heavy, And I asked him one day, I says, hey, I know you compete, you train for this competition, and you go to the gym sometimes. I'm just curious, what we do, how does that meet up with somebody, how does that compare to guys that go to the gym? He says, dude, they can't keep up with it. This is so much harder than going to the gym. I mean, you get stuff on the internet, online, the big muscle guys that, are demonstrating what they can do. But they don't do that 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They do it maybe 1 or 2 hours a day.
Right.
Because they got other stuff in their life that they got to do also. And I get that. And I'm excited for this goal that I...
Cool.
And
well,
so
I'm excited
ask me about it, and I want it to be a surprise, and I don't want...
I won't ask you.
Her to ask. I told one person, and she's gone, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool. And it's a big enough thing that
cool.
It's going to be exciting.
I'm excited for you. Well, we are out of time for this today, but as you can see, there's a lot. If you've been listening to me, you can start to see, okay, this is a lot of who Sam is generational. A lot of who I am has come down from, even my grandpa, but I don't know, right? But stuff has come down, and I hope to be able to continue that legacy. I think when I first started this podcast, a part of my idea was wondering how I wanted to be remembered, and I felt like I wanted to be a significant person in the memory. And as it has evolved, I've studied more about Eastern politics. I don't even know if you call it politics, but the way that the Eastern mentality is, China, Asia, that type of mentality is dynasty thinking. And this happened also in Italy, during that time, where the goal is not to necessarily be remembered. Maybe you do one thing, but the goal is to make sure that your family stays in power and gains a little bit more. You're not just a manager of the legacy, although some people, they're just manager of the legacy. If you read certain scriptural texts, it's also in there where it's hey, this is your job, your duty, and you have some people who are really exemplifying it, and other people are hey, this is my job. I kept them till I died. I passed them on to the next person. We're good. So then there's 50 years of no records because that guy was not a record keeper, but he still maintained his minimum duty. And so I think the more and more I think about legacy, it's not about that I will have any major significant life-changing impact, but more importantly, that the lessons that I was instilled with will get passed to the next generation. Like if I can be a conduit, not that I don't want to improve on those, I do want to improve on them, because I think that as we're talking about this energy, there's a desire to kind of heal some of these feelings in the past, to bring into equilibrium. So like an example, and then we're going to call it good. I'm just going to bring up this last example, right? So in your life, Dad, your dad wasn't really around. And as a pendulum swing from that, you were probably around a lot more in early childhood, for me at least. Eventually you went and got a job and you worked there for 17 years. But before that...
21 years.
21 years?
Yes.
21 years.
Is that incredible or what?
Yeah, it's amazing, right? But that was after a lot of leverage. It wasn't your desire to do that. Your desire was to basically be, and maybe I'm wrong in misinterpreting it, but you wanted to be a stay-home dad. You wanted to know your kids. You wanted to enjoy your kids, right?
Absolutely.
And so the pendulum went from absentee fatherhood to I just want to be the stay-home dad because I missed this experience as a child, and I want to provide this experience as a parent, right? So, and the downside to that, potential downside to that is then you miss other lessons, and it's so far the other way that we're missing out on, like, what does it look like to provide income, and be it like as a man, what does that look like, right? So if you have all this dad who is just always there and didn't provide income, and you have this other dad who was never there and didn't provide income, then like what's a happy medium, right? So those are things that I think about. Okay, how can I be a present father and demonstrate to my children and explain to them and express to them, hey, yes, I'm present, and I do this work for families, and I chose a career that I could be a present father and provide value, right? So it's not one or the other, but it's like, okay, what's this in between area?
Yeah.
I could have went and got a job where I worked 10 hours a day and traveled too. I could have got a job where I had to travel a lot. I could have got all these types of jobs, but for me, when I was getting into my life, I was looking for, okay, I want to provide a lifestyle for my family, and I want to provide a mentorship style for my family. And so I need income. I was going to go into neuropsychology. I would have been there for 30 years, and I would have graduated, 13, and then I would have graduated and made a little, like maybe $100,000, $200,000 a year. And I recognized in college that wasn't going to produce the lifestyle that I wanted to have when it comes to serving in my community, serving in my church, serving in the world, going on service projects with my kids to other countries, being able to be at home, being able to be at their sports, it wasn't going to provide the lifestyle. So I intentionally chose a career that theoretically, if I do my part, will provide both the income and the lifestyle. And all of our siblings chose different things, and some of them chose that same thing. Our oldest brother, John Michelle, he built his company based off of, we're not traveling. Our company doesn't travel. If we can't find work locally, we don't find work, right? But like we're not a traveling company, right? And that's a core value of his. Well, because probably a very similar thing. Well, there's value in being present and there's value in hard work, and how do we marry those two? So I think that as a rule, if we can build on what we have, take the lessons from multiple generations and start to heal those lessons into one, and that's just in that one area, right? There's lots of different areas where these things matter. But that's kind of where I see legacy now, is how do we start healing the past relationships with different areas in life in the past. So that's why I'm excited about this partnership between John and I, my dad, to start interviewing people on the podcast to get their perspective and your perspective married into, well, what things are you improving on? What things are you working on? What did they learn? Because I think I've had the blessing of interviewing a lot of people, and I've learned a lot from them. I've learned a lot about myself. I've implemented changes. I've done things because I had the blessing of interviewing people who had already achieved success in different areas of their life. And as a gift back to you, part of this is I want you to go have those experiences so that you can be challenged by these guests, and also think, okay, how can I ask a better question in my life and change the question I'm asking myself? How can I change the question I'm asking myself to improve?
Yes. And that's going to help me in the other things that I'm doing in life too.
100%.
I want to add, just while we're finishing up here, I remember on my way to work one evening, because I worked nights for most of that 21 years. I'm on the freeway and I realized it came to me, if I had the dad that I had, because he had the parents that he had, therefore, their lives, although I don't remember them that much, their lives impacted who I am. They influenced how my dad raised me those first 7.5 years. They influenced how I grew up, to the point where decades later, my wife would look at the two of us and go, oh, they're just alike. If his parents hadn't been who they were, and now that I'm thinking about it, and if their parents hadn't been who they were, good and bad.
There's no good and bad. There just is.
I mean,
there is no good and bad. There's just is.
Well, that's what you have to give up. But I consciously felt like I needed to just send the message out to them saying thank you for being who you were and for the influence that you have been on my life and my children's lives, because I know that who you were has influenced how I taught them. And I invite everyone to take that time. It doesn't have to be sit down and think about it. It just has to be a thought that comes up when you're driving, or it can be while you're just sitting there or laying in bed or whatever. Recognize the influence of those past generations and thank them in full acceptance and love, and thank them. And that will change your life, and you'll see it. And that is so cool.
It's changed my life, and I think I have more multiple generations to go thank. I'm just grateful for all of it. I'm grateful that I am who I am. I'm grateful that I was raised to be who I am and given the freedom to become more. And that's all part of it. So thank you so much for this conversation, Dad. I'm excited to post it. We can have more. And I think we'll also attempt like multiple, when we do record other podcasts, have, that's the word, multiple shows that are where you're on, I'm on, and a guest is on. Because that'd be fun to kind of see that perspective. Yeah, so we're going to get Dad, John Knickerbocker, a website. We're going to get him set up so that you know where to go, and you can just learn more about him and his life, because that's a big part of this. And in the process, we'll get him added onto the Fuel Your Legacy website, so you can see that he'll be also an interviewer. And then, like I say, if you want to be on this podcast, you see value in it, then reach out to us on fuelyourlegacyshow.com. You can register there, and super excited about this.
Call now, don't hesitate. 385-323-2493. Change your fate. A legacy in motion once you go.